All right, welcome everybody. So we are here today. We're actually going to film a video about tomatoes, and then thought that we would talk about one of our last fall trials from last fall, which is our overwintering onions. So if you have ever tried to grow onions here in St. Louis, you know that it can be a little tricky to get the bulb onion to be like a good sized bulb, like you see at the grocery store. And the prime reason for that has to do with day length, which is like a whole thing. But long story short, basically our spring is not really long enough to allow the plant to get big enough before it needs to start putting energy into a bulb. And so we started looking around and finding some onions that were listed that they could be planted in the fall and overwintered, which sounded very appealing. Because if you plant it in the fall, then it has the fall and the winter, and then all spring to get nice and big so that hopefully the bulb would get bigger. So we planted a bunch of different seed, but the seed was kind of old, and so we only ended up with 2 different varieties. And unfortunately, for the most part, it didn't really work. But the reason we're talking about it is there are some good signs, and we're going to continue to try because we think that it has some promise. So what happened, why we say it didn't work, is that most of the ones that we planted did bolt, which is usually what onions do when they overwinter, is that they'll bolt, they'll go to flower. You get these really pretty kind of globe-shaped flowers here. Which the bulbs don't last very long when they bolt. And so we didn't really want that to happen. And of the 2 varieties that we planted, one of them, every single one bolted. So the onions got, a decent size, but not huge, and then they bolted, which is what this looks like. So these onions are still good to eat. You can still eat them, but they're not gonna store very long at all. So like the ones that we're harvesting today, like we're gonna put like straight in the kitchen and eat them basically as soon as we can, because they're going to start getting kind of soft and just not holding very well. But we have all of these that bolted. But you can see, even of this variety that didn't do real well, some of the onions are still pretty good size, even though it bolted. But the thing that makes us hopeful, and why we want to try some other varieties, is the second variety that we grew. So this one was called High Keeper, and that's like H-I space Keeper. And we planted, there's about 10 of them in here, and several of them did bolt. So of the 10, I think 4 of them bolted, but then the other 6 did not, which is good. So you can see of the ones that bolted, most of them are still kind of small, which is not ideal, but we do have this one that bolted and produced this onion, which is pretty enormous for an onion in St. Louis. And there was no fertilization of these, which is another thing that can kind of help push the size. We didn't fertilize these because we just wanted to kind of see what they did. So this is a pretty good sized onion, especially for one that bolted and was not fertilized. And this one did overwinter just like the others. But the ones that did not bolt, of which there are several, and a few we actually already pulled out a couple weeks ago to look at, but here are the ones that did not bolt, and then this big old one. So again, those are pretty good. So the fact that some of them still bolted, close to half of them still bolted, wasn't great. But to us, at least, that says that overwintering is a possibility as a way to grow bigger onions here in St. Louis. So this fall we're going to grow a lot more varieties. I think we have 6 different varieties that we have seed for now that we're going to be growing new seed for. So they should germinate well for us, that we'll be growing this fall. And so hopefully next spring we'll have a great variety for you. But if you want to try one now, High Keeper is the one that did pretty well for us. And again, even the bolted ones you can still eat. These ones that are not bolted, the ones that is like that you would normally harvest, when you know how to harvest them, is when they flop over. So they did this on their own. I didn't break the stem. So they were like that. So when they do that, you can harvest them. The tops are still green. So if you just have a few, you can just kind of lay them out like on a table or somewhere where you have some airflow. Or if you have a lot of onions you're working with, you would kind of tie these up and then hang them somewhere with good airflow, like on a porch or something like that. But those are our onions.